2 days after an explosion killed over 100 persons in Abaise community of Ahaji Egbema Council area of Imo State, the number of dead has increased, with the whereabouts of many still unknown. Correspondent of Yeteme George reports.
We drove through a narrow path in the bush. When it became too narrow for vehicles, we got a motorcycle with the rider promising to take us to the site of the explosion. I am somewhere in a forest in Abezi community of Ohajebema local government area of Imo State, where tragedy struck on Friday, the 22nd of April. Black Friday, they call it. Now, this is a typical example of a loading bay where people come to buy products, that is petroleum products. They call it black market within the Nigerian speech community. Now, look at this. This vehicle is burnt, and there are other ones also burnt in this particular location. Now, we understand also that those who actually died were not just those doing this business. They call it business in this place. Few persons are willing to give information, but we got that information quite right. They come here to do business, and those who are also here to buy the products were also consumed by the fire. Now, look at this. It is cellophane. I asked someone earlier, and he told me this is used to bag the products. Let's say diesel, bag the products, and then they leave. Of course, there's a footpath here, wide enough for vehicles, not for large trucks, but motorcycles also. So this is the sad situation here. Looking over there, the cameras can't go that far because of the charred remains of youth who had come here not knowing that they would meet their Waterloo. Now, this is the interesting aspect, conflicting figures of those who must have died here on Friday. Some said 100, 102, 235 as at yesterday, but what we're hearing today is mind-blowing.
Sometimes little children or people that don't have work come here to tie cellophane, to work for people, while there are other people called buyers. They normally stay here to buy products, then go to their normal location and refine them to kerosene and diesel. So what brought about the fire, we had that it was a local fire that came out from where they were refining the products. So the fire caught up with the gas here. So everybody that was in here got surrounded by the fire, and no single soul escaped, unless the ones that were sitting aside. But the ones that stayed here, almost 400 to 500 people here, they got burnt, and none of them escaped. And from what we are hearing, because this place is controlled by a deity, from what we are hearing here is that anybody that the fire touched, even if it touches you in your finger, that you're not going to survive. Even if you go to the highest hospital in this world, you're not going to survive.
This is an abandoned motorcycle 2 days after the incident. The owner may have been a casualty of the fire that engulfed this little part of the forest.
Here is where people come for their business, like for their normal crude business. When the event struck, like souls have been carried away, you saw the damages on properties like vehicles, you see lives, you see women, married women, pregnant women. When we are talking about 200 or 100, it should be underestimation. We're calculating of 500 to 600, because in there in the villages, a lot of souls, like a lot of gaskets, were buried. Even some are under conditions which we can't precise that they will be alive till tomorrow or so. From my community, we should be counting of 100 or 200 that were buried. What about the other communities? What about the neighboring communities? What about those who've not been able to actualize their location? Like a sister we've been searching for her, we've not gotten her location, we've not gotten her address. Called her number for some time and we're not able to get to them. So this is another disaster that has struck Ebima people.
My community, we are looking for about 100, and I don't know about other communities. But so many souls, if you look at this place now, you can see that so many people have been burned ashes. You cannot recognize any of them. So the number we can see, you can just manage anyhow. We can't predict any number any longer. You can say 500 or 600, so many of them. Look at their deaths.
Many bodies have been evacuated, yet more lying on the ground, burnt beyond recognition, while the whereabouts of many are unknown. The smoke dies out, leaving vestiges of pain, sorrow, and tears in the eyes of the affected Ohajebema communities of Imo State. Ovietime George, Arise News.
I don't even know what to say at this point. It's unspeakable. And to think that, as tragic as it was, to be told 100 people were burnt to death, that is vastly underestimated according to Viteme's report. I mean, I read the president's statement talking about a national disaster, which it is. It absolutely is. But I do wish that more thought was sort of put on what caused the disaster, the factors that led to this. What drives people to this kind of desperation? This is the most dangerous of workplaces, illegal refineries, because they're literally cooking this stolen crude oil to boiling point on naked flames. So this kind of thing really was inevitable at some point. What drives people to that? It's the unemployment. People don't have jobs. Those who do have jobs, their jobs are really poorly paid, especially in comparison to what they could get working in these illegal refineries. So they literally take their lives in their own hands and feel like it's worth the risk. But we can now see that it's absolutely not. It's really, truly unspeakable. And we're now told that the owner of the refinery is a wanted person. He's been sought by the law, which will definitely catch up with him. He has questions to answer, but that's not going to bring these people back, and it will not repair the damage. It's just something really needs to be done to address the factors underpinning this. We've talked a lot about oil theft from the economic sabotage point of view, but now we're seeing the even more grievous side of it, the cost to human lives. And this is just from one disaster. Let's even start to think about those who don't get burned to death, they don't get immolated in this really appalling fashion. They will get all kinds of long-term illnesses. The kind of environmental degradation will also cause illnesses. So when we start to count the physical toll to Nigerians, I mean, it becomes incalculable.
Well, this is a confirmation of the alarm that have been raised consistently since the beginning of the year about the threat that oil theft poses to the Nigerian economy. You recall, first it was Tony Elumelu. After Tony Elumelu, there was Austin Avuru, both saying 80%, 90% of crude oil production in Nigeria is lost to oil theft. Now, Shell had to abandon its operations in the Western Niger Delta in Forcados. Hell's Oil and Gas was also saying it was having issues. Aitio was also threatening to suspend operations because of the threat. Now, that's from the point of view of the oil companies. In Rivers State, Governor Nyesom Wike launched a war against illegal refining, and he got the support of the local government chairman whom he promised money. And there was a task force set up, in Rivers State to go after these illegal refineries. One of the things we said at the time was that, look, it wasn't limited to Rivers State. It was a problem across the entire Niger Delta. And you recall that at the time, the president gave a directive to both the upstream authority, and also the Ministry of Petroleum and NNPC. And the Minister of State, Timi Presiva, said he was leading that battle against illegal refineries and oil theft. And in spite of that, in spite of all those best intentions, we have a wake-up call now in Ohaji, Egbema, local government area of Imo State. Over 100 lives have said to have been lost, where nobody knows what the exact number is. Those gentlemen that were interviewed by Ovietime George, one was even saying in his own community, maybe over 200. But whatever it is, this is unacceptable. This is an indication of the failure to be proactive in dealing with identified problems. The second part of it, of course, is that the presidency has issued a statement. There is nothing in that statement that is original. These are the same statements. A national catastrophe, a national disaster. We commiserate with the people. The government has given directives that the operators of those illegal refineries should be caught, arrested, apprehended, and made to face the full wrath of the law. Well, the same righteous statements have been made, and nothing may be done at the end of the day. However, This day newspaper was reporting this morning on its front page that even the Nigerian Navy is saying that over 6 million liters of stolen crude have been seized under Operation Dakatada Barawo, that have been put in place to deal with illegal refineries and oil theft. Well, that's about 420-something billion naira stolen from Nigeria, according to their own calculations. But you can be sure it's more than that. The Nigerian Navy, in that detailed report in this day newspaper today, we're told is going after ovens, is going after refining plants, is going after tankers, our tanks. How about the barges that take these things to the high seas? How about those, ships, that collect this stolen crude and make it possible for people to steal from Nigeria? But whatever the Nigerian government says it is doing, Operation Barawo or whatever, the truth of the matter is that you have to sustain the effort and you have to make it a national priority. It's not when a tragedy occurs that we begin to make noise. As we have seen in the example of Rivers State. In Rivers State, where they have a task force, that task force did not suddenly emerge under Governor Wike. It was there before, even when, at the time of his predecessor. But these task forces, they will function for a while, and then somehow, you don't see that political will to pursue this in a quite systematic manner. Yeah, the Navy, they say, well, from Anambra to Kogi State to Ondo State, all the way to Akasa, to Indeta, all the way to Bayelsa, and all of that they've been monitoring all these illegal refineries. Well, all this just noise-making to give the impression that something is being done. If it is a problem that affects the economy, and that also poses a major threat to the environment, as you have seen in the Aitio spillout in the Nembe Creek, and in other cases, this is the real problem that we have to deal with. So I hope we will not complain today, and then everybody will go to sleep. And when the next explosion occurs, we'll come back and say the same thing.
Dr. Batie Antundu, I'm going to surprise you because that's exactly what you said will happen. We'll complain today, we'll go to sleep, and the next one will happen. You know why? Because in 1998, something like this happened in Jesse, Delta States.
Yes.
Jesse, over 1,000 people died in Jesse. Over 1,000 people were burned to death. And guess what? The same reaction of what happened in Jesse is what's happening now. I remember then it took General Abdulsalami Abubakar, the head of state, a couple of days before he got there. The response was slow. It was the intervention of the Red Cross that helped the situation. Hospitals were overwhelmed in Sapele because Sapele was the next major town in JC. Since that incident, we've had over 15 different explosions like this in the legal refinery. And it's across board in every area. Look at places like, Look at places like Adeje in Delta State. There are legal refineries there. I'm saying that dates back way back to 2001, 2002. This illegal refinery, are we going to say that government patrol agents did not know about it? Probably they knew about it. Probably they were even collecting bribes from the people. So it's an ecosystem. Oil theft has become an ecosystem. So the people that have died have just become victims of this ecosystem, which you can cascade back to the nascent problems we have as regards economic situation in the country. And it's all like that across every part of the Niger Delta. Any pipe passes through, that's always the case. For a scale of this, that you have 200 people or 500 people going into the bush every day, you can't absolve the fact that authorities didn't know about it. The question is, when will the next explosion happen? Because we're as good as the next explosion happen. Like I always say on this show, culture will eat strategy for breakfast. We have a culture of incompetence, and sadly, when it catches up with us, people die. So it behoves on the Nigerian government, the Navy, like you said, they've done some good job, but other areas like this, and also citizens of various communities. Because there's no how that they don't know that this thing was a big risk and they were all tapping and enjoying the largesse. And crude oil theft is multi-pronged. Look at all our border towns. They are buying petrol, taking it away. We have a big problem on our hands and we need to save Nigeria. My commiserations to the lives lost. Emmanuel Macron has been re-elected president of France after winning an estimated 58% of the votes. The victory makes him the first French president to secure a second term in 20 years. Experts say the result offers the European Union the reassurance of leadership stability amidst Russia's invasion of Ukraine. French allies have hailed the elections. Mr. Macron thanked the supporters in a victory speech.
Merci.
Thank you, dear friends, dear compatriots, here in Paris and everywhere across the territory, in France, overseas and abroad. Yes, first of all, thank you. After 5 years of transformation, of happy and difficult hours, of exceptional crisis too, on this day of April 24, 2022, a majority of us have made the choice to trust me to preside over our republic for the next 5 years.
De transformation, d'heures heureuses et difficiles, de
Tundu, your take on this?
Congratulations to him. What a relief. I mean, I couldn't bear the thought of Marine Le Pen. Sorry, I'm not sorry. I just could not.
Yeah.
And yeah, like you said, he's the first in 20 years to achieve this feat of a second term. The last was Jacques Chirac. The French don't really like their presidents sitting around. You know, they had their referendum in 2000 to reduce their presidential term from 7 years to 5 years. But for me, I just want to look at the parallels to our situation here. It's really important that President Macron was talking about, you know, unifying France because so many people did not vote for him quite clearly. And that's what we're facing here as well. The fact that for our next president, we need a unifier. Also, their low voter turnout should be something we should all be worried about. Voter apathy is a problem here in Nigeria. We hope that, you know, 2023 elections will buck that trend. But they only had their lowest midday turnout in 15 years. About 26% of the voters had turned out. And what is so extraordinary for me, almost comical, is this phenomenon that we saw even after President Trump, former President Trump in America, defeated Hillary Clinton, and everybody comes out in their thousands to protest. After abstaining on election day, it doesn't go the way you want, then you come out to protest. Then why on earth did you not simply vote? They were saying, oh, we don't want Macron, neither nor. We don't want Macron, we don't want Le Pen. So they abstained, and then you're now angry. It makes it completely bonkers. So I think we need to learn that lesson. It's extremely important to exercise that franchise. And I also feel that, just generally, it just goes to show that opinion polls don't mean that much. They're very limited because President Macron went into the election with very low approval ratings of 39%, and he won the election. So the opposition party should not just rest on their laurels and assume, oh, this current administration is massively unpopular, we're going to win. Marine Le Pen went around appealing to the working French people who are really struggling to make ends meet, talking about the high cost of living. But that wasn't enough for her to clinch it. She was talking about how Macron is so elitist, that awful nickname that he has, Jupiter, you know, the Roman god of gods, that he's so elitist as the president for the rich. But that wasn't enough for her. The opposition really had their work cut out, and they did not quite deliver as they thought they would.
Well, congratulations to President Macron. As you pointed out, the first French president to win a second tenure after 20 years. Now, when he was giving his acceptance speech, he said he will be a president for all. And this has been a vote against the far right. And it's important that you stress that, because when people are disenchanted, when they are unhappy, they have a tendency to move towards the right. We have seen that in some other places in Europe. And so, as he says, he's the president for all. The major challenge for him is that France today is more divided than when the election took place. So he's going to preside over a divided country. And it is important that he realizes that, because even after the results were announced, you know, in parts of, in many cities across France, anti-Macron protesters came out and they said this is unacceptable. Even in the election, voter apathy, 72%, the lowest turnout rate since 1969, and very significant numbers of spoiled or, you know, damaged ballot papers, which, you know, observers say must have been willful. However, there's great relief in Europe, and that's why, you know, European leaders have been very quick to congratulate Macron, because, you know, a Marine Le Pen presidency will have resulted in a shift in Europe, imbalance in Europe, because it will have affected economic policies and orientation of the EU. But, you know, so that's why there's that big relief. Even the markets are relieved that Macron is still in place. However, for Marine Le Pen, she took over the party which her father established since 2011. She says yes, even in defeat, she thinks she has done very well. She got more than 13 million votes. Better performance than she put up in 2017, and better performance also in the debate. She got up to about, is it 44.45%, 41.45%, which is, some advancement. The true test, however, will be how those far-right elements that have seen an option in Marine Le Pen, how they will behave going forward. Because she was campaigning on the basis of cost of living, on the basis of immigration policies, and also trying to paint Macron, as a friend of the rich. And also, of course, she's considered a neo-fascist in many quarters because of her links with the Kremlin, with the Russians. But it's not over yet. France is going to have Senate elections in June. Now, and the indication is that, look, with this rise, gradual rise, better performance of the far right, would it affect the elections, the Senate elections, when June comes? And how well will Macron be able to prepare for that? But for now, everyone is relieved that a neo-fascist has not taken over in France. But the challenges are ahead, in my view.
The challenges are ahead, and let me just piggyback on those parliamentary elections because they're going to make the bulk. So a lot of those voters that abstained were Jean-Luc Mélenchon's voters. They said they were not going to vote for Macron, neither Le Pen. And Jean-Luc Mélenchon in the first round got a sizable 20% number, mostly lots of young people. He appealed to a lot of young people in universities like the Sorbonne in Paris and some other parts, and, countryside people. So he's also putting up a proposition now that he could actually be prime minister if he wins the parliament, if his political party wins the parliament. That proposition is on ground now. Those young people that didn't come out to vote in this election will definitely come out to stomp big time for Jean-Luc Mélenchon. So it's not going to be a quick sweep for Macron to the Republican march any longer like he won the parliament the last time. So I think the icing on the cake would be that fight to finish between the Mélenchon camp, the Le Pen camp, the likes of Éric Zemmour, also coming into that parliamentary election. So France is more divided. Macron simply just tipped the balance because Le Pen wasn't a good candidate for the runoff. If it was a Mélenchon that went to the runoff, it would have been harder for Macron. And when you look at the politics of France, it's still pretty much tense now. Those problems are still on ground. Even the fact that Macron tried to defend so hard in the debate that cost of living has improved, it is not improved. A lot of people are still going through hell as regards living conditions in France, and mostly in the countryside areas of France, which is a big problem for them. And that's why when Marine Le Pen sold a bait to them that she was going to reduce income tax for under 30 years old, they jumped on it. So let's see how that parliamentary debate goes.
If they jumped on it, they should have come out to vote. You don't cherry pick what election you're going to participate in.
So let's see how that parliamentary election goes. Let's see the Jean-Luc Mélenchon factor, which is going to reign supreme in all of this. But like they say in France, vive la France, vive la liberté. All right, that's all on news headline. We'll take a short break. When we return, we'll have Rotu Sudiri, Michael Wilson to give us updates on Africa global business activities across the globe. Stay with us.
Welcome back to the morning show here on Arise News. Our dependable Rotu Sudiri is here to give us an African business update. Good morning, Rotu.
Good morning, Tundu. Good morning, Rufai. Good morning, Doctor. Yeah, we begin with the Nigerian Navy saying that they've seized about 6 million liters of illegally refined crude. This would have been celebrated, with the Operation, Barao thing that they've got going. Unfortunately, Dakata Barao, thank you. But sadly, this has been overshadowed by the tragic events that took place in Imo State with that explosion, which is what death toll is over 100 people. And the timing, considering we've been talking so much about the economic impact of oil theft, but there's also a human cost to this now, to where you look at the dangers of this practice, it brings it to the fore as far as the nation is concerned. So, the Navy is acting on this. They're moving forward. They've seized this. I think the estimate is 250 billion naira is the estimate of this 6 million liters of illegal crude that they've seized. But unfortunately, with respect to the tragedy, it just again emphasizes the need for the government to act as quickly as possible, because there's not just an economic cost, there's also a human cost as well. And we saw that very good report from Ovieteme George on this matter. So look, it's ongoing, and look at the devastation. It's really, really terrible stuff, and may their souls rest in peace. But again, the Nigerian government, President Buhari has commiserated with those whose lives are lost, and saying that the government should to step up as far as this is concerned. We move to transportation in Lagos. Lagos State Governor Babajide Sanwo-Olu, with members of his cabinet, inspected the Blue Line, which I believe is intra-rail system within the commercial capital of Nigeria, Lagos State. He was joined by top officials of the Lagos Metropolitan Area Transport Authority, LAMATA. He says that the Blue Line should be ready by the first quarter of 2023. And Lagosians should be able to use it. And this, of course, I think the Blue Line runs from Marina to Mile 2. He also says it's going to be electric and people shouldn't walk on the tracks. And he was also lamenting, again, we're talking about oil theft, vandalism of the rail lines and so on, and says that people should desist from doing that. So, it's you've seen special reports here where we've got images of the governor and him looking around at the improvements that have been made. The key thing here, first quarter 2023, he says it's 90% complete. And so we should be looking for that. The red line, by the way, that runs along Ikeja, Alagbodo to the Marina axis. So we'll see how that goes first quarter of next year. We move to emerging market pressure that some nations are facing. There's an interesting chart I saw here from Bloomberg. If you look at this chart here, you're looking at government's debts as a percentage of GDP versus the change in sovereign yields, bond yields, which is the cost of what some nations have to pay when it comes to the debt that they've been accumulating. So you see the nations in red there. Those are the nations who are facing, this is from Bloomberg, again, Bloomberg Economics. These nations, emerging market nations, are facing extra pressure. So you've got Ethiopia in there, El Salvador, Tunisia, Pakistan, and Ghana. So not only, particularly for Ethiopia, which you can look at that, they're almost at 18% on their yields. Now, by the way, there's an inverse relationship between the price of your bond and the yield. If there's a lot of demand for your bond and a lot of people are buying it, then your yield is going to go down. Conversely, if people are getting rid of your bond for reasons, one reason or the other, your yield is going to go up, which means the coupon payments and the cost of your debt keeps rising. So, there's a twin-headed dragon here where you've got still the impact of COVID that has impacted the fiscal structure of a number of these nations that had to borrow heavily to support their economies. And then you've got the war in Ukraine. Ethiopia, before we even got to the war, the Tigray situation was already costing the government quite a bit in terms of military infrastructure, impacting foreign exchange and a number of items. Now, I understand Ethiopia spent about $2 billion on fuel subsidies last year. This is before where we are now with oil prices rising. Cost of living is rising there. Tunisia, they are getting close to another uprising because bread prices are going up. Their president is under pressure. They're cracking down on dissent. People are complaining about cost of living. It's the same thing happening there. Ghana, we've talked about Ghana repeatedly. The fight over the e-levy bill, how badly they need revenues from there. So, that chart again just shows that there's serious pressure for a number of emerging markets. Now, look, a lot of folks, mention Nigeria. So Nigeria could end up like Sri Lanka that defaulted on her debts, or could end up like Venezuela. We're not there, so thankfully, but our issue is debt service to revenue ratio. Our debt to GDP is nowhere near the likes of Ghana, Ethiopia, and so on. But there's still lessons to be learned from the pressures that they are facing. And we're facing those pressures as well. In fact, if I should mention Tunisia again, under 25 employment is over 40% in Tunisia. Inflation is at record high. So they are all just facing different pressures. Finally, we end with Zimbabwe. An industrial body published a paper on Friday. The Center for Confederation of Zimbabwe Industries, a lobbying group, accusing the central bank governor there, Dr. Magundia of Zimbabwe, of raiding. They said they're planning to raid dollar accounts, which is, we went through that here in Nigeria, where they said the central bank was, silly rumor that the central bank was planning on raiding domiciliary accounts. So the government came out and said, look, that's not the case. That's not going to happen. But they are making plans to de-dollarize the currency. There's a big spread between the official rates. I think it's 155 to the dollar in Zimbabwe. The parallel market rate is about 360 or 380. And increasingly more people are using US dollars there. So Old Mutual, the global insurance company that has a unit in Zimbabwe, said that dollarization of Zimbabwe is almost inevitable because more people are going towards the US dollar currency and not using the local currency, the Zimbabwean dollar. Dr. Magodwan said, no, that's not the case, and that they're going to have a process in place to de-dollarize. But how that process is going to work is another story. So that's, again, you're just seeing the same story play out across a number of African nations, I mean,
so I know that every currency, every nation wants the pride of its currency. They want the currency to do well. But the case is peculiar in Zimbabwe. This is a country that's gone through close to 1,000% inflation rate at some point. And most of the problems were started by Robert Mugabe when he kept on printing more money because of those sanctions by the West and the like. So Zimbabwe has gone through a lot. And at some point, the Zimbabwean dollar was almost worth nothing. And now dollars crept in. The economy has been dollarized. The dollarizing it will have to be a systematic approach over a period of time.
Right.
But the question is, what are the things, what are the incentives to cushion that effect? Because take, for instance, Zimbabwe used to be the bread basket. They had a lot of agricultural produce. Are they churning out those products to be able to stabilize in such a way that it's going to have a knock-on effect and give their own dollar, some level of credibility? No, it's not the same. No any grand new investment coming into Zimbabwe like it used to be before. So there are some sectors where they should look at, competitive advantage. Yeah, they've got a competitive advantage in diamond. I think they've got the Merengue mines in Zimbabwe and the likes. But apart from solid minerals, they should also look for other sectors where they can, reflate their currency, compete effectively, and then start to stabilize things over time, over a period of time. I'm excited about the Blue Rail.
In Lagos,
but a part of me feels sad. Because if it kicks off in 2023, Lateef Jakonde tried doing this in 83, so that would be exactly 40 years since the first groundwork was laid for that project. Yeah. And we're just kicking it off. And that's why you see we have the traffic imbalance in Lagos and the transportation nightmare. Because this is a project we ought to have done 40 years ago. But I'll say kudos to Governor Sanwo-Olu and the Lagos State government, because better late than never. Lagos is the only mega city I know in the world, correct me if I'm wrong, that doesn't have a mass transit.
Well,
like
I'm
rail.
mortified to be excited about a rail project in 2023 because, like you said, everybody else has got it. I guess the best time for this was 40 years ago. The next best time is now. But for Governor Sanwo-Olu, this is great for him. This is his themes agenda. The T in the themes is traffic management and transportation. So this is an excellent coup for him, and I am excited, quite frankly. I think it will make a huge difference in the quality of life of Lagosians. It's unfortunate, though, that he had to talk about vandalism and potential electrocution. Right. Why are we like this? And it's really important that he did have to stress it, because we will go and we will vandalize. Look at what's happening all over the country with the rail tracks that we have. And that's a similar situation. We're also excited to finally have our rail up and running all over the country in 2022. But hey, we take what we can get. Right. With regards to the story, Dr. Abati referred to it earlier about the oil theft, that huge hue and cry from different quarters really has had an effect. That complicity is obvious and it cannot be denied, but it does appear that our security agencies have decided to actually act on this issue. And if they had done that from the beginning, a lot of what we're talking about would never have arisen.
Exactly.
Well, the question about the global situation, the economic situation, is how much worse can it get? It's bad enough already. In what is called a post-pandemic recovery phase. We were just trying to recover from the COVID-19 pandemic and then the war in Ukraine. Yeah. And then, of course, in some parts of the world, a country like China, for example, you are also having issues with lockdowns and all of that, and the knock-on effect of all of that, commodity shocks, energy crisis as a result of the war in Russia and Ukraine, the Federal Reserve of the U.S. adopting a more hawkish, tightening, aggressive stance, and the implications of that, the interest rate, U.S. interest rate, the implications for countries that are heavily burdened by debt. And we've seen, as has been pointed out, what this can cause. Say, for example, in Sri Lanka. Sri Lanka now has defaulted on its debt repayment, and it's not alone, but it's the poster, example now for the effect that can have, and the crisis, the instability that you can have. A few years back, we used to celebrate emerging economics, the countries that were called BRICS. At a time, we were even dreaming about BRICS with the N inside to represent Nigeria. But, with all these crises that the world faces now, those developing economies are in trouble. The World Bank is saying that low-income countries, up to about 60% of them, are in very serious trouble. Many of them, in fact, borrowed money to be able to fight the pandemic. And with all of these other factors that are out there, then there could be a cocktail of risks. There could be a seismic wave and implications for social and political stability. Okay, it is Sri Lanka today. Which country will be next? Will it be Turkey? Will it be Nigeria, perhaps? Or will it be Ethiopia? Or will it be Egypt? Although you were making the point yesterday that Egypt has some advantage with the Middle Eastern countries and the U.S., trying to prop up, Egypt. So the question again is, where is the role of leadership in all of this? Because some of the countries that are worst hit are those same countries where leadership is a serious problem. Like Japaska, until this moment, was filling the cabinet above federal and state level, which is kinsmen and relatives and his brothers. Okay? It's only now the other day that he came up with a new cabinet just to, appease to the emotional sentiments, if there is any such thing, of the IMF. So I think leadership is part of it, particularly in Africa. As for Operation Dakata Dabarawo, okay, yes, as I said, very detailed report, front page of this day. But why is it that people are just waking up now, after so many people have died? What happened to the investigations that the president ordered? We would like to know. It's not just about the illegal refineries. It's also about the export, the transportation of the stolen, crude. The third challenge will be sustainability. Would this be sustained? So these are all the issues. It's not enough for us to commiserate and say, oh, people have died. Because tomorrow, when is the fire next time? Who is that? The fire next time? James Baldwin? James Baldwin, yes.
I love him. Thank you, Rotus.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much.
Moving on to more business update. Michael Wilson joins us now from London. Good morning, Mr. Wilson.
Good morning. I'm going to take to we'll come away from France just for a moment. Very interesting to hear you talk about that. Just let me take you to Asia first of all. You were talking about the pandemic. Well, further lockdown now in Beijing, which is, of course, China's capital city, particularly in the business district there. We're seeing that this morning. 3 days of mass testing is going to take place there. So Hong Kong, Hang Seng down a bit. China, as you would imagine, the mainland Chinese market slid as well. No surprise is the view about this. Makes all kind of logical sense because it's going to get in the way of everything, particularly impacting China's economic activity and particularly not helping supply chain problems as well. As far as the United States is concerned, big falls on Friday, and the stock futures have actually fallen as the markets get underway. Today, the Dow Jones down 36, but on Friday, it dropped 981 points. That's a long way for it to go. 2.8%, the worst day on the Dow since October 2020. All the major averages closing down as a result of what happened last week. Severe damage in the market. People turning to defensives like utilities, staples and pharmaceuticals, and even mega cap growth. The Twitter is taking another look at Elon Musk's bid for it. Now, the reason for this is that they have to do this. It's the law in the United States that if an offer of that kind of size is made, they at least have to how to do it. The question that the markets are asking this morning, and experts I've been listening to, as far as the tech stocks are concerned, is what actually would Elon Musk's business plan for Twitter be? Because Twitter is not doing very well at the moment. If it were just about free speech, then the trolls might, take over again. The way forward might be subscription services on Twitter. We'll see about that. Okay, let's talk about France. I know you've covered this morning. Macron beat his far-right rival there. But actually, the gap between the two of them illustrates exactly what you were saying. There's still a big rift in the country. Remember that France is Europe's second biggest economy. It's its biggest military power. What kind of challenges does Macron actually face? I would think quite considerable ones. He's trying to redo the economy. It's good news for the markets, good news for NATO and the EU. Will he manage to reunite France? Take a look, if you would, at the sort of map of the votes, and you can see where the real problems for him are in the north of Pas-de-Calais and areas like that, which are seeing high unemployment and high immigrant levels. And Ruben was exactly right. At times like this, people actually tend to go right if they're worried about things, and this is what I think is probably going to halt any kind of reforms, or at least slow them down, that Macron actually wishes to do. Let us turn our attention to the United Kingdom. The Balfour Beatty chief CEO Leo Quinn's been saying that as far as the UK is concerned, a decade of infrastructure growth. The Prime Minister announced about 4.8 billion for infrastructure investment across the north of the country, 26 million pounds to be spent on emission targets. So this is good news for infrastructure projects. Remember, though, the local elections here on the 5th of May, and there's increasing thoughts now that Boris Johnson has, in fact, as they put it, lost it. UK, again, P&O, it's being forced to reverse its attempt at getting cheaper pay. It comes after the RMT union received reports of agency workers at Dover being asked to sign contracts replacing their old ones with reduced payment. That is not something which the RMT union is going to let slip. They are floating one particular boat as we're seeing it today, but this is still a classic example of how not to handle an industrial dispute. Cost of living crisis. Morrison's, which is the fourth largest supermarket in the country, is cutting the price of 500 items. It's facing incredible competition from the likes of Aldi and Lidl, which are cut price supermarkets as well. The cost of living rising at its fastest rate in 30 years. UK airlines should be fined for refund delays, according to MPs. The passengers have been hit by disruption of the pandemic. Yeah, we know this, and I'm not exactly sure what airlines are supposed to do, because it's been very, very difficult for them to plan in any way at all. But this is about refunds, and it's feeling as though passengers should be getting those refunds much more quickly. Oil has fallen in Asia already overnight, over our trading night, and as far as Asia was finishing as well. Pretty understandable given the slowdown in China and Beijing as well. Gold has wilted against a stronger dollar, as it often does. Remember that if you're buying gold, you're using dollars. The stronger that, the more expensive it is to actually hold it. And a big week ahead, really. We're talking about flash CPIs from the EU. What will ECB policymakers make of rising inflation? Bank of Japan's rate decision also this week as well, and we're going to get Germany, France and Italy and Spain Q1 GDPs. What actually will that show us? And of course then the United States, and we get the core PCE reading. That's something which the policymakers actually tend to quite like. The Federal Markets Open Committee meets next month. The likelihood of a 0.5% interest rate rise, I think, is getting closer. That's the global view as we start a big week for numbers.
Right, Michael. Real quickly, I'm seeing the UK doing some infrastructure spending, but there's a literature out on it. Does infrastructure spending really bring about that job creation growth, job creation that people can earn wages way above the inflation numbers that are crippling the UK economy now? Because, yeah, a lot of politicians quickly resort to infrastructure spending, but does it really reflect the economy in terms of jobs? That's one. Number two, the economists were saying over the weekend about the Fed. Simply, the words they used was the Fed that failed. Has the Fed failed? Because when you look at the CPI numbers coming out of America, those are big numbers, close to 10% CPI increase and the likes. And the Fed looks like it's not even doing anything about it. Jimmy Bullard had spoken about 3% interest rate, right? Nothing. What's happening?
As far as infrastructure is concerned, politicians love that word, don't they? It's sort of as if somehow out of magic you're going to reflate an economy because you announce big schemes. Well, of course, the public has to pay for those schemes. Private industry may pay for those schemes as well. The fact of infrastructure plans, as you well know, and you've just been noting this new railway, this blue line you've been talking about, isn't it extraordinary how those things always overrun in terms of costs and expectations, and also time limits as well. So that's infrastructure for you. Sounds brilliant. Again, that Balfour Beatty was the quote from the CEO. They're a big construction company. They're hoping that the money will start to flow in over the next 10 years. We'll see. As far as the Fed's concerned, I don't know about failing. I mean, they certainly seem to be behind the curve right now. And I think if they're going to have a big hammer, it'll be that 0.5% interest rate rise, which is bound to, I'm pretty certain. I mean, are we not certain that it's going to be announced in May? Will that dampen the economy? Will it cause stagflation? I mean, the jury's out on this. It wouldn't be my plan if I were doing things to do things, very, very suddenly. I think slow and gradual is the way forward, with plenty of signals about what you're trying to do. I think that's what a central bank ought to be doing. But it's the best of the worst, quite honestly, and we'll see whether it works or not.
Well, the Game of Thrones for Twitter, how do you think it's going to end? The 11-member board, after failing to apply what they called the poison pill, which was the proposal to prevent anybody making a hostile takeover, saying that nobody can have more than 15%. Now they're being forced to negotiate, to work out a deal. How would this Game of Thrones end? In favor of Elon Musk or the 11-member board of Twitter? And then secondly, P&O. Now P&O keeps repeating the offense. They're giving out contracts, to people, and they're talking about, they are not giving out contracts. They engage people, seafarers, they don't give them contracts. When they give contracts, they are negotiating that they should take a lower pay. And then, the RMT is supposed to wade in and say, no, that's unacceptable. Now, when similar thing happened in the US with a guy called Visha Garg, Better.com, when he sacked his staff via Zoom, the point was made then that, this cannot happen in Britain because Britain has very strong employment rules. You have to negotiate with your workers at least 40 days before. You have to assist them to get other jobs. You have to pay compensation. But we have seen that what happened in Better.com with Visha Garg is no different from what P&O is doing. Now, where is the gap in the law that is making this possible, and what do we need to do with regard to employment laws in the UK to prevent this kind of situation in the future?
As far as the law is concerned, I think the reading is this. I mean, yes, you're right, it's a comedy of errors, but if it's in international waters, then that's governed by international law, such as it is, not by domestic law. What the RMT union are saying now is that people who had contracts with P&O are being offered contracts which are less than they were being paid in the past. That will not work, and that's something which the RMT union are actually going to crack down on. But given of course it's a comedy of errors. I mean, what happened was, if you remember, the CEO came on, didn't he, and said the reason that we did it like this. I mean, he didn't mention that he's bowing down to the masters in Dubai, the United Arab Emirates, who actually own P&O ferries, not P&O cruises, P&O ferries. But he said, there was no likelihood the unions would have agreed, so we just went ahead to do it. I think this has got a long way to run, quite honestly. As far as Twitter's concerned, the issue really is that, again, this is what market analysts have been saying this morning, here at least, and in the United States, it's not a proper business. It's no use just talking about free speech as Elon Musk is doing. First, number one, the board has to consider this offer. That's the law in the United States. Whether people outside look at it and think to themselves, is this a proper way to run a business? This was happening a long time before Elon Musk approached it. The fact is that the model that they need to look, according to market analysts at least, is a subscription model, and that really would get Twitter up and running again, but there'd be all sorts of problems there. So free speech equals trolls, basically. That's what the big fear is, and the market doesn't like that.
Right, I read that article quoting the Balfour Beatty CEO in the Financial Times. But for me, infrastructure isn't just about the economy, it's also about politics. Boris Johnson promised a levelling up agenda he has to deliver. People outside of London need to be able to point to what the Tories did while they were in power. It's exactly why Joe Biden has taken his infrastructure roadshow so seriously. It's extremely important. As for Morrison's and the price war, well, I'm not sure if you have enough time, because I wanted to ask you if you think that will help bolster their position, because they're sort of lagging behind among the big four UK grocers. They're doing a lot worse than Tesco's, Sainsbury's and Aldi. But I'm not sure if we have enough time, maybe tomorrow. But we don't have enough time. Well, thank you very much, Mr. Wilson, for your time this morning.